Have you ever wondered why women of color or diverse backgrounds code switch? A recent article I read on Harvard Business Review stated broadly, code switching involves adjusting one's style of speech, appearance, behavior, and expression in ways that will optimize the comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment, quality, service, and employment opportunities. You might also be wondering what this has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That excerpt illustrates the importance of assessing your values. Code switching can have its repercussions. Are you ambitious? Do you seek advancement, no matter the cost? Or is it important for you to be your authentic self, regardless of the work environment? Are you more willing to code switch for short term gains, but unwilling to sacrifice your authenticity for an extended time? My name is Rochelle Carrier, and I'm a DEI inclusion specialist. And for a living, I help thought provoking leaders and business owners implement workshops and DEI plans in their workplace. And if you tune in, you will not only have better insights of our experiences, it will allow room for self reflection. My personal share on code switching is the more I evaluated who I was, the more exhausting I actually found code switching to be. And our special guest today is Natalie Lee Martin. Hello, Natalie. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, Rachel. I'm so excited to be in the room with you yet again. You have these thought-provoking discussions, and I'm glad to be a part of this one. My name is Natalie Lee Martin, and I am the Mom CEO coach, and I coach moms out of corporate and into entrepreneurship. I have 5 amazing kids of my own, and I'm a military spouse, and I am a person that I have to say, I have and I do code switch. So that's going to be a very interesting discussion today that we're having because I believe that I still do in some areas. And I'll discuss more why as we get
Right.
into this. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's something that we probably all do consciously.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go into situations
Yes.
thinking this is what I'm going to do or this is how I'm going to switch,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the lizard brain. So, I'll ask you the question, have you ever code switched, which you said you probably.
Absolutely. Listen, I think it was something that was handed down to us from birth, especially as Black, African American, Caribbean men and women. We have been taught to code switch. And it's not something that we sit down and we say, hey, this is what you do in this environment. This is what you do. It's something that is just a learned behavior. And we got to go back to the history of this thing. It started with us in slavery when we were brought to this country. And I'm saying for, Africans were brought to the Western Hemisphere. It wasn't something that we traveled and we said, oh, we like this place and we want to be here. We were dragged from a country or from our homeland and brought to this side of the earth and stripped of everything that we connected to, all of our culture, our heritage, our language, even the texture of our hair was considered something to be bad. So when, the slaves had to be in the presence of the master, they had to change who they were and identify with the culture that was dominant at the time. And so to survive in that particular society, they had to learn how to code switch. They had to learn a new language, a new way of talking that was inauthentic to who they were. Because when they got back together in their huts or with their families, they could breathe and become themselves. And so we were taught to do that so that we can survive. Even let's go back to the 80s when my mom first came to this country. She was a Caribbean woman, had, a very thick accent. In order for her to survive in the society that she knew, she had to kind of switch it up, change a little bit. I'll say for me, I was 5 years old when I came to this country. I had a very thick accent, but I learned early on that I had to change it. I literally learned how to speak like an American because I felt, and it was because people said, oh, where are you from? Are you from Africa? And they'll make sounds like, like, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, I'm speaking English. No, you're not. And so you've learned or trained yourself to change so that you can adapt to the environment that you find yourself in. And then
Right.
you realize, listen, I'm always, changing or always trying to adapt, and you forget who you really are, your authentic self. So code switching for me has been something that has been a part of, I feel like it has been a part of my identity for such a long
Mm.
time, that going into the corporate world, I'll say that I had to code switch. You know, braids wasn't always the big thing. When
Right.
I started working, you got looked at a certain way.
Right.
Everybody's hair was supposed to be, straight or a particular way. So it wasn't welcome. I remember having dreadlocks when I was younger, and I moved to the South. And as soon as I came in, even though I was a phenomenal teacher in the classroom, when they saw my hair, they were like, oh, she must be X, Y, and Z. And so I had to put on that, hi, everyone, how are you? My name is Natalie Lee Martin, and that kind of persona, so that they would feel comfortable in my presence, because my appearance did not line up with what they thought I should be in their minds.
Correct. It's interesting you
Mhm.
said that. So, do you believe you made them feel comfortable? And were you uncomfortable? Did they make you feel uncomfortable knowing or foreseeing what they thought of you? And then you put them in a position where they can feel comfortable by switching.
Yes, I sure did.
Mm, got
I
it.
sure did. I made them feel comfortable because I wanted them to know that I was not a threat. And that's what it was. I wanted them to know that the way that I look was not a threat. So now I had to adapt to your idea of what's non-threatening so that you don't feel uncomfortable by my presence. Now I have to say, I no longer do that. I thank God that I don't have to do that in this situations anymore, because I know who I am. And that took a lot of unbecoming to understand who I was. And it is, like you said, it is exhausting. It is exhausting showing up and pretending to be a certain way, to pretending to have a demeanor, or pretending to be, not to say pretending to be friendly, but I can't show my friendliness in the way that I normally do it because you're uncomfortable with my culture. And
Right.
basically, that's what it was. You don't know my culture. You're not exposed to my culture, and you're exposed to it based on what you see on television or based on the bad experiences that you have. And because I look like what you've experienced, you've already attached something or a way of being to me. And so now I have to change your perception of what you think I should be by being like you or being like your culture.
Right.
And so that way of always trying to fitting and always trying to adapt taxes and wears on you, because you're now taking on other identities that is not even your own, and you get lost in that. I got
Mm,
lost in trying to be like others. And it's not just, an environment where, 99% of the teachers are Caucasian women. It's not just an environment where 99% of the school are African American. It's always me trying to fit in this space and trying to switch up, because I can go from having an American accent to talking like this all the time, because I'm a Trinidadian. So I could do that when I want to. But it's like finding that balance of, oh my gosh, who are you really? Who are you really? And being okay with saying, I may not fit in with the majority of people here. I may not fit in with the majority of people in this end. I may not fit in with the majority of people in Trinidad, but I know who I am. And when I walk into a space, I have something of value that, even though it may not look like everybody else, it's still valuable and it's still worth being in the room.
right. It's interesting when you said that you might not be accepted in Trinidad, or you might not be accepted in different environments, different
Mhm.
situations, different places, but now that you're becoming you've
Mhm.
unbecome a person to
Yes.
shed to become a new person, or the
Yes.
person you always were,
Hmm.
and now your values are aligned with your core values.
That's it.
So now that you're showing up knowing you have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
And it's interesting. You said that you're of Caribbean descent. So am I. And my parents were both born in Haiti. They left in the 60s. They left a long time ago. And we went to Boston, where I was born. And then my grandfather sponsored us. He had a business in Montreal. So we sponsored us. We went to Montreal, and I was there for 35 years. And what's interesting was that you you mention, valuing who you are today and showing up. So growing up in Montreal, there were a lot of shifts that were occurring and code switching that was occurring that I wasn't aware of or consciously aware of. And I think what triggered it the most for me was when I did go back. I went back home. I was never raised in Haiti, but I went home. I call it home. I went home and I didn't fit in. So when I spoke Creole, I didn't sound like a Haitian who was brought up in You're laughing. I was called the Haitian diaspora. And I thought, that's strange because my parents are Haitian. I'm Haitian. I'm brought up in a Haitian household. What is it do they see that I don't see? And why is it that they're perceiving me different from them?
Yeah.
And so in order for me to not have to deal with fitting in, I was code switching to be accepted among the dominant culture.
Ooh.
And so the dominant culture was where I was raised, in the suburbs, in, Caucasian America, Canadian America. And that's what I did. And for years, I think it was a survival, because then I realized if I'm not accepted from my Haitian peers, then, high school, university, I'm going to be accepted here because this is my environment.
Yes.
But in order for them to accept me and not feel threatened by what they see and what they're exposed to, right, then I will appear to you in a non-threatening way. But it was exhausting once I realized who I really was and that I did not care, how others saw me, Haitians, Americans, whoever. Then, like now I know I have a seat at the table wherever I go. I bring myself, and if people don't like it, then they can walk the other way.
Exactly. And you said so much in there, Rachel. Oh my goodness. so much. It's just like because when you identify with a culture that does not accept you, you're like, where do I go now? If you don't see me as one of you and this is who I identify with, then something must be wrong with me.
Right.
So in order to find yourself, and I feel that's what it was a journey of finding who I was. I had to code switch to get to that place.
Right.
And like you said, it's a survival mechanism because it weighs on you mentally when you identify as something and everybody rejects you. But as I've matured, I've realized that rejection is just a way of God saying that you're set apart. You're not really rejected. You don't have to fit in because there are places that we're going, as women of influence and impact, that if we stay in the environment that we were born into, or we stay in the environment that we're comfortable with, our mindset will never shift to be able to pull them out of the place that they're in. Right. So I grew up with a lot of people that were poverty in Trinidad, a lot of poverty. They still, in some of the places that some of my family members still struggle with that. Right. But it's not because there is a lack of resources. It's because of the mindset that we've had. And I had to be removed from that environment so my mindset could shift. I had to be rejected so that my mindset could shift. So now I'm exposed to a new environment where people are thinking differently and people are exposed to different things. And I'm code switching to kind of adapt. And the code switching was, like you said, a survival mechanism because it gave me access to a room that I wouldn't have had if I didn't code switch. So I look at it now differently because not that I still code switch, I needed to change that from what I said in the beginning. There are parts of me that only certain people in certain room will get access to. And I'm not code switching anymore. I'm just showing you this particular part of me. So when I go into a business meeting, I'm not necessarily talking about my kids all the time. I'm not necessarily talking about my husband. But that is part of who I am. You know, when I get into a different room and I'm talking to moms, I'm not necessarily talking about, the business all the time, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how to, deal with the children and how to, work with your spouse. It's different. You just get a different piece of me. When I'm with my family in Trinidad, I don't have an American accent. They'll be looking at me like, girl, I don't know what you're saying. And so even though I switch up my accent and they're going to be like, it's still not up to par. They'll tell you all the time. My cousins make fun of me like, you're still American. Yes, I am. But it's like that. That is part of me. I am a
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's now different rooms get different parts of me. And, they will not get the full exposure to who I am. But I am still authentic.
Right.
Authentic. That part of me is still real. It's still authentic. I no longer have to fake it. So the way I'm talking to you right now, the authentic Natalie, when I go into the boardroom, this is me. I'm not switching up my voice. I'm not switching up that, hey, this is Natalie Lena and that. No, I'm not doing that anymore. This is who I am. This is how I operate, and my values are still in alignment. My actions, I should say that, are still in alignment with my values.
Right. Your actions are aligned with your values. And that's pretty important because then you're leading with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. You're leading. And you talked about mindset. It's interesting how, I look away because I'm thinking at the same time.
I do that too.
Yeah. Processing all the information. I find I think the mindset, there's been a lot of hype about mindset.
Yeah.
But it really is a mindset. Mm-hmm. And to break it down a little bit more, it's the dialogue you have with yourself.
Woo!
Right?
Yes.
So it's the inner dialogues. What are you telling yourself? Which story are you telling yourself when you're not being your authentic self?
Mm-hmm.
When no one's around, when you're doing the groceries, when you're parking your car, what are you telling yourself? And that's a process that takes undoing.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So you were removed from your situation to see differently, to be exposed to a different environment that allowed you to code switch, that actually served you, and which is the next question, as an advantage. What are the advantages or disadvantages of code switching, which is the next question. But it served as an advantage to you because now you're in that new environment, in that nude space. New, not nude. New. Let's not get it twisted.
I know. This ain't that kind of party.
It's not that kind of party. So, it takes, I think, very much a lot of wherewithal, and to be in the moment.
Yeah.
With those thoughts. Thoughts could be detrimental. They could be, advantageous or disadvantageous or not advantaged, to you. So, do you think that was an advantage for you to code switch?
Yeah, I think it was because, it just gave me access to rooms that I would have never been in But it was because of my limited mindset at the time, because I don't think that I was in a place to be authentic and be strong.
Right.
So for me, it gave me an advantage. But I love what you're doing here, because what I think you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you want to make an environment, or you want to create a world where code switching is unnecessary.
Correct.
And I don't want my children to have to code switch just to get access to a room.
Right.
I want them to be strong enough, because I wasn't.
Right.
And that's why I code switched, because I wasn't strong enough to be authentically who I was and bust the door open saying, this is me. This is who I am.
Yes.
So if we have these discussions, we can create a world, because
Right.
that's the vision that, I love your vision, and I want to rock with that, because I want the world to be a place where we can show up authentically as ourselves. And we're just judged, as Martin Luther King said, by the character, regardless of what you look like on the outside, because the outside appearance can be deceiving. You can look like, the particular type of person that would not do anything wrong, and they prey on that. They
Right.
prey the looks, and I've done it so many times. I look at a person and be like, oh, you're non-threatening. And because that's what society has trained me to think, they're the ones that take advantage of you.
Right.
Because they know, oh, you going by appearances, you going by the outer exterior, the looks, and you're not judging me by the content of my character. And now we are creating a world where that's where it's going to be. We have to start being able to judge people by the character, seeing their character, and then making a decision based on that, not prejudging, not having situations where, the Trayvon Martins or the Sandra Bland situations. No, we have to begin to say, enough is enough. Code switching not necessary here.
Right.
You.
Absolutely.
And hey, Shanika, how you doing, girl? Yes, that's okay.
Absolutely.
If she's doing her job and she's doing it well, what is wrong with that?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Mm.
Absolutely nothing.
And it's interesting because there's a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
So, I believe I really believe it's the brainwashing from the news, the lack of positive historical facts. I say lack because it's being removed from our history books.
Yes.
Lack of positive or historical facts about who we are, where we came from.
Yes.
That there was a Black Wall Street.
Yes.
We won't discuss what happened, but we know what happened with that Black Wall Street.
Yes.
And we did have queens. We did have queens, and I'm going to take it a step further because this is where my mind is going. But, we were whitewashed.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And, a simple experience that I went through, I nipped it in the bud, but I went through it with my daughter. So princess books, are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to dig and find Black Disney princess. Dug and dug and dug and dug, and I discovered them. There were 25 of them. Apparently,
wow.
Disney wants to do more characters that are Black. Mm-hmm. So I found these women. They were girls. And when I showed them to was she 6? I think she was 5. She's turning 7 in November. So I think she was 5. And I literally laminated them. And then I posted them around the kitchen so she could see. And she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, they're all fake." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Those are not real princesses." I said, "No, I go, who are the real princesses? And she went to get her books.
Oh.
And I thought, ah. So I did a radical change. I literally got rid of all the princess books
Mm-hmm.
and I replaced them with only books with women, men, and kids that are black and brown,
Mm-hmm.
kings, queens, princesses, little leaders. And I started buying books from, African American authors and who were depicting black people and brown people in a positive light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only then that her process and her mind was shifting. So when I say, and it's not in a negative way, that's just the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
what I was exposed to.
Yep.
And that's what she was going to be exposed to,
Yep.
which was pretty frightening
Yeah.
because now she can actually identify herself as a brown girl.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Ah,
That is
I
so powerful. My goodness. Whew. And this is one of the reasons in December of last year, well, this a while ago, for years, I wanted to write a children's book about my daughters because my daughters are part Hispanic and Trinidadian and American, and so just a mixture of cultures. The way that our house works is a little bit different to everybody because, we'll have rice and beans one day, we'll have curry chicken the next day, oxtails, or we'll have lasagna. And it's not necessarily the same as, every typical American or typical Puerto Rican household. It's just a little bit different. And so I wanted to write a book about my girls. And in December, I published the book, The Travel Adventures of Bella and Anna. And when my girls saw the book for the first time, they were like, look at me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy they get to see themselves in that cartoon version. But what was really powerful is when other people bought the book and when other girls were like, they look just like me. With the pigtails, with the braids. One of the characters has braids and they're like, they look just like me. And I would get these pictures and even the boys, because I had little snippets with my sons in there and the boys were reading it and they were like, they look just like me. And you don't realize how powerful representation is because we didn't have that, these princesses look like me. We just adopt and adapt to our environment and we're passing on the same things, not intentionally.
No.
Because you're not intentionally trying to teach your daughter that, princesses are all white.
Right.
Not, you know what I mean? It's just, that's part of our culture and we're part of this new culture. But the beauty about it is you recognized it and you said, nope, I'm not going to mix it in. Because sometimes mixing it in kind of,
right.
They're like, oh gosh, you said, I'm going to show you people that look like you, that are positive representations. So you have a picture, a vision of now where you can be. And even if she steps out, and some people think that that's hatred, it's not. Self-love does not equal hatred of others. And that's where they get it wrong. I love myself to show up as myself. It doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't mean I don't accept you. I just love me. And out of that love for myself, I can love other people. But when you don't love yourself, you do other things, to other people, and you don't even recognize and realize that.
Right.
So I just love that you just was like, you know what? Whole shift.
Whole
shift.
Entirely. Because and it leads to our next question. That could have been a repercussion.
Yes. Yes.
What are the repercussions? It's the code switching. It's depression. It's burnout, exhaustion. I've been there.
Yep.
Because it's mentally taxing because you're acting.
Oh my gosh. That's it.
Right?
That is it. It's mentally exhausting because you are acting.
You walk out the door, you dress how you think you're supposed to be dressed. Your hair is the way you think your hair is supposed to be, or how they feel that your hair is supposed to be, and how, you speak, like you said earlier, it's exhausting.
Exhausting. That's exactly what it is. It's exhausting.
And it's detrimental to other relationships because then now you're showing up as your inauthentic self in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So no one really knows who you really are.
And neither do you.
And neither do you.
And neither do you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a process. It
It
really
is.
is a process, and as moms, I think it's really imperative for us. It's probably a whole other show, but I think we really need to be able to be on top of it.
Yeah.
Be on top of it and encourage confidence, because I think it comes with, I believe strongly it comes with confidence,
Mm-hmm.
and not just the appearances.
Yes.
The content, like, and
Yes.
the content of the character, like Martin
Yes.
Luther King said.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes, like you said, and it goes, to our other point, are you increasing your likelihood of being hired? Do you think that in code switching increases your likelihood of being hired at the time?
At the time,
Was that your experience?
I think for me, I don't think so. I mean, I want to say yes, but I don't think so, because if I was when I am authentic, I'm powerful. So when I'm just who I am, it is enough. I didn't know that. So in my mind at the time, I would say yes, it increases my likelihood. But knowing what I know now, no. Mm-mm. And if I really showed up as myself, I probably would get more offers. Because
Amen.
as myself, what I carry, the knowledge that I have, even then, the knowledge that I had, the fact that I grew up in an environment where crackheads were walking around served me well, because the first school that I worked at, even though, yes, I had the code switch to get in there, the kids could not identify with the Natalie Lee Martin that I tried to portray myself to be. And that first year of me working there and trying to be the teacher that I saw, it was not working for me. The kids did not gravitate towards me. They didn't accept it. They were like, you're being someone that I don't connect to. I see, even though for me, they looked like me, they couldn't connect with me because I was showing up as someone else, as another teacher that they already had connection or established a relationship with, which was not positive. So if I could break it down and just be real,
please.
I had white teachers that I was emulating, and they were not connecting with those white teachers. And I tried to emulate those people. And so they didn't connect with me because I'm emulating or acting as the people that they don't have any connection with.
Absolutely.
But it was until my second year where I decided on my own, because I had, even with my code switching, I still had unsatisfactory, yes, I had unsatisfactory reports. Like, they were just like, you are not connecting with the kids. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing everything that I'm taught to do. And when I decided, you know what, I'm going to just show up as myself. I'm going to show up as Natalie Lee, because that time I wasn't married. I'm going to figure this thing out within me. And when I showed up as myself, it wasn't like the superstar, but it was so much better than what I was the very first year, because it was authentically who I was. I grew up in the hood. I knew what it was like to have crackers in front of your house. Behind our house, there were stolen cars all the time. So when I got on the bus, I wanted to make sure I got home before dark. Like, I understood that. And that's where my students were coming from. And that's what I had to tap into in order to create a connection. And once I created a connection, the math part, the teaching part was so much easier. But I was going about it the way that the white teachers told me to do it. Do it this way.
Right.
And this will get you the results. And meanwhile, I wasn't even checking at the results that they were getting to see that if what they were saying were right. But I was just seeing them because, again, the whitewashing that we experience, we see teachers in a certain light, dressed a certain way, showing up certain way in the classroom, and we think that is what a teacher is supposed to be.
Right.
And forgetting the character, forgetting the connection, forgetting everything else. We're just looking at the outside appearance. And so I don't think it served me. It gave me more opportunities, because if I really showed up as my best self, I would have gotten that opportunity and probably more because of that
Right.
carry. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Oof.
Yeah. And the no's, we get so boggled down by the no's that we hear that we
Right.
think the no means something is wrong with us.
Right.
And it's not always the case. The no can be that environment is not ready for you yet.
Right.
They haven't caught up to where you are. So you need to go somewhere else that would celebrate you, because if you get into that environment, like you said, you are code switching is mentally taxing. It drains you. You lose your identity, because now you're like, I'm showing up here as this person, and then when I go home, or when I'm around people that I truly care about, I'm showing up as that person. I don't know who I am, and that's the dilemma. And when you don't know who you are, it's easier to be manipulated in your actions, because your identity does not line up with your values. You really don't have any values.
Right.
And so your actions can be manipulated so easy when you don't know who you really are. And
Right.
one thing I have to say about Caribbean parents, I got to give it to them. Regardless of where we go as children, if we are from a Caribbean household and you come back, they're like, do you know who you are? Do you know who your mama is? Like, you don't just go out there and act a fool and think you just going to, no. Remember who you are. Remember what we imparted into you. Remember those values that we put into you. Remember those things. And I know not all Caribbean parents do, but I know some Caribbean parents out there, or kids out there, that will relate to this, because I know I heard it a lot growing up.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. There's a lot of pride
Mm-hmm.
in being in a Caribbean household, and being Black, of course, but in being in a Caribbean household as well.
Yeah.
And I can definitely identify with what you're saying, because there was, always be proud of who you are, be proud of what you've accomplished. Make us proud. Don't embarrass us. The big thing is don't embarrass us.
Yes. That's a big one. Don't you embarrass me.
And even at other, Caribbean households, if my daughter goes and, to my girlfriend's house the other day, and they were having a play date, and my concern was, how did she behave?
Yes.
That was my concern. And Cleo's like, don't worry about it. She was awesome. I'm like, okay, I'm making sure.
Yep.
So because it's part of our education.
It is.
My mom, in our household, it was very, education was speaking multiple languages, or, taking extracurricular activities, but mannerisms and being polite is a huge, is huge. And respect for elders. That's huge. That encompasses the education.
Yes.
In Caribbean households,
Agreed. I definitely agree. But I think just being exposed to different cultures helps you realize where your culture can move beyond certain things.
Right.
So the part where, yes, we are all about, the mannerisms and respecting. Sometimes it can be restrictive, because when you get in certain environments and you want to be authentically yourself, you're always worried about, how am I being portrayed?
Right.
So, listen, this is a great conversation, Rachel. I mean, like, Lord, we've been stuff. As a culture, we don't realize how, and I think that's why I see a lot of things where it comes to, the Black experience and mental health now, because we don't realize how much slavery affected our mental health and well-being as African Americans in the world. And people think that when slavery ended, but it's a mindset. You know what I mean? That is passed down. There is learned behavior. There's thought patterns that's passed down, because we were We were strong enough to survive.
Right. Right.
But how we survived may not necessarily be, you know what I mean, strong for us today. May not necessarily be the thing that
Right.
we should be holding on today, because we're in a totally different world.
Right.
And now that we have opportunities, we're taking them. We're not
Right.
anything on the table anymore.
No.
We are the Harriet Tubmans of our generation.
Absolutely. And the Rosa Parks.
And the Rosa
Absolutely.
Parks. And we're not just, sitting at the front of the bus. We're sitting at the front of the boardroom table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
And it starts with the representation, with the representation. And again, we have to pass this down to our kids
yes.
as moms and dads. It's the representation, it's the books, it's,
Yep.
self-esteem, the confidence.
The
And
confidence.
yeah, and showing up as your authentic self.
Mhm.
It's probably not something that we can probably get into today, but I remember another guest had mentioned, she had mentioned to me, Rochelle, you need to do a show on hair texturism. And I was like, oh my God, there's more. There's more. There's that much more that we went through. Not that there's more information, but there's so much that we go through.
So much.
And the levels, it's like an onion. You're peeling an onion. You're peeling the first layer, the second layer, the third layer, and you're slowly revealing,
Mhm.
who you really are as your authentic
Mhm.
self. And then
Mhm.
you throw all the appearances,
Mhm.
all the things that we think need to be apparent in our appearances. You throw that in the mix
Mhm.
and you're thinking, but what do you mean?
Mhm.
It's normal to relax hair.
That's the culture I grew up in. It was normal to relax your hair. When you turn 5 years old, before you go to school, you're going to get a relaxer.
And again, like you said, it goes back to slavery.
Mhm.
What are you going to do to survive?
Yes. Yes.
To be accepted
Yes.
and to be given an opportunity.
Yep.
So you are no longer seen as a threat.
Oh!
Right? Oh,
I know this conversation is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, but it has to be had.
It has to be had.
Yes.
It has to be
Yes. It
had.
has to be had.
And I think like you said, the minds are shifting. We've
Mhm.
shifted and we have a place. We've always had a place. We just
We've
didn't know
always
our
had
value and our worth,
That's it.
right? We didn't know our value and our worth. Oh, Natalie, this has been amazing. It's always a pleasure to have you. You were on my first show.
I was, yes, with all the other women. Yes, yes, yes. I remember that.
You were on my first show, and that was back in June.
I know. You have done an amazing job. Listen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm so
Seriously.
happy that you gave me the opportunity again to be blessed with your presence on your show. I do follow you on Instagram and on LinkedIn. I
Yes.
love your IG lives, and it's very refreshing, very inspirational. I might not like everything I see, but I do read them and then I take to note. I read the quotes and I read the quotes that resonate with me, and then I take it with me so that I can continue writing these books, continue doing these
Yes.
talks, continue,
Yes.
we need to continue
Yes.
inspiring one another so we can
Yep.
inspire each other.
Each other. Yeah.
We're serving others.
Yes.
We're
We
here
are.
to serve, but we also need to be replenished. So
Yes, we
thank
do.
you.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we're leaving the world so much better than we entered it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So much better.
I agree. I agree with all of it. So my keynote is that while I tried to limit my own bias as much as possible by interviewing only women who I did not know and sticking to the same set of questions for ongoing interviews, it was impossible to completely remove my own personal experience, from this discussion. Without it, I would have not been able to undertake it in the first place. The continual theme surfaced that if true equality in the workplace and in our homes is what we're after, then sooner or later, we will have to tackle the issues that are distinctive to us, right? And this is what we were discussing. And especially in the workplace, we need to recognize we're not alone. I know many of you are having these courageous conversations and dialogues with people around you and trying to figure out how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie said there's going to be a lot of probably, discussion about what we talked today. How do you feel about this? These are authentic conversations we need to have with ourselves, within ourselves, to be able to ponder things and to resolve those questions will be distinctive to us, especially as women of color and of diverse backgrounds. So reflect on your personal and professional experiences through your own community and workspace. What's essential is that you do ask those questions. Please go through the process, reflect what is crucial to you and why is it that you're going through it. Over time, we will continue having a united front. Transparency and authenticity is key. We need to be ourselves. We can fundamentally create that transformation. Take your drawbacks and turn them into something others can
Yeah.
find valuable, and give yourselves some grace. Natalie, it's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Ah,
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Rachel. Continue to do this. You are literally changing the world by having these discussions and by asking these questions.
oh, we will. And I thank you again for being a guest today. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.